Let's give our attention to Genesis 41, verses 41 to 57. So we're on the tail end of what happened with Joseph. That's why we had to review it with the kids, because I think all of us need to be reminded what all happened to him before the section we're going to read. So Genesis 41, verses 41 to 57. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and people shouted before him, Make way! Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, but without your word, no one will lift a hand or foot in all Egypt. Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zaphenath-Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, to be his wife. And Joseph went throughout the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. He was probably about 16 or so when he was taken from his home. Teenager, anyway, somewhere in there. Joseph went out from Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully. Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt, and he stored it in the cities. In each city, he put the food grown in the fields surrounding it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. Before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh and said, It is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household. The second son he named Ephraim and said, It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. The 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began just as Joseph had said. There was famine in all the other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt there was food. When all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, Go to Joseph and do what he tells you. When the famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt. And all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe everywhere. This is a picture of the Ten Boom family. They were a family that was willing to take some pretty dangerous risks. It was during the persecution of Jewish people during World War II. The Ten Boom family is from Denmark. They took Jewish people into their home and they hid them from Nazi soldiers. And they were actually very successful at it for 2 years. They successfully hid and protected Jewish people. And then in 1944, the Gestapo came to the Ten Boom household and arrested them. And in the picture, the lady that's the second to the left, that's Corrie Ten Boom. And the lady all the way to the right is her sister Betsy. They were taken to a prison of war camp as sisters, where they were living with all other women. And in a place that had very little hope of ever returning to normal life, Corrie and her sister Betsy brought the hope of God to women who were there in that prison. And then her sister Betsy became terminally ill, and as she was taken off into the hospital ward to die, she whispered to her sister Corrie, we have to tell people what happened here, and that is in the prison. We have to tell them that there is no pit so deep that God is not deeper still. In other words, what Betsy was saying was that God alone is able to bring hope in the places that appear to be the most hopeless. Have you maybe heard that quote before? There is no pit so deep that God is not deeper still. That's where it comes from. I know it's a bit of a stretch to compare this situation and the challenges they faced with Nazi Germany and being taken away for hiding and protecting innocent people. I know it's a stretch to compare that to our relationship with money. But there are some challenges, and there are situations with money that can feel a lot like you're in a deep, dark pit. And maybe even there are burdens. Maybe if you're not in a terribly, terribly desperate situation with finances, there are also burdens if maybe if you have wealth and God's blessed you and you've been able to plan and maybe there are burdens that you have or that you need to have about what to do with that. So, anyways, it doesn't matter what situation we're in financially. The same hope that fueled these women in a really difficult situation is the same hope God's going to give to us as we begin a commitment toward financial freedom. And I know that's the commitment that we're going to make is going to be different for each one of us this week, and I'll talk more about that. But to really start becoming intentional about our relationship with money, it does involve commitment, and it does involve some work. So we'll talk about that later, but there are financial pits that are real and for which we need the hope of God. Speaking of pits, Joseph was pretty familiar with them, wasn't he? Joseph, like I was telling the kids, was especially favored by his father, and so he was probably kind of like the ultimate spoiled teenager. And he also made it very clear to his brothers that he had these great dreams where they would be bowing down to him, which isn't probably the smartest thing to do to your brothers who already hate you because your dad likes you the most. But anyways, Joseph then was sold. He was a victim of human trafficking. Right? I mean, that's really what happened to him, taken away from his home and his family at a very, very young, vulnerable age. And then, after some good things happened, he went down into the pit again, and he was accused of something he didn't do, and he's in jail. And then, some people who made some promises to him that they were going to remember him before the king and help get him out of his position, they forgot their promises to him so that he continued to be treated unjustly. And so if anybody ever, if you'd ever think like this person really, they could be just such an embittered, really dark person, it would have been Joseph. I mean, he could have been a really, really dark, embittered person. And I guess it makes me think about you and me, right? And what happens to us when we're in the pit. How do you do? How do I do? When life is not going the way that we hoped it was going to. Or when life actually even takes the opposite direction of what you hoped for it to. How do we do? It can be so scary, right? And it can be so overwhelming and so crippling to the point that I think it's very easy to just want to check out. But God was doing something with Joseph while he was in the pit, while he was suffering. He was actually developing perseverance in him, right? This is what Paul was talking about. We know that our sufferings produce perseverance, and perseverance character, and character hope. God was getting Joseph ready for a really, really important calling. And so I think that's something for us to think about when it comes to financial pits, financial burdens, whatever they are, whether it's being up over our heads in debt, or whether it's thinking about maybe having a burden on us again of what are ways to manage wealth that the Lord has given me well. And think about who I can help. That needs to be a burden on us. So in order to do that, God needs to, he needs to develop perseverance in us too, doesn't he? Because that's the ultimate goal. Like the whole thing with financial freedom, the ultimate goal isn't necessarily to get to a certain point. It's that God would continue to shape our character and build perseverance in us. Have you ever thought about financial challenges that way? That might be what God's doing to you through financial challenges? That he's actually more interested in forming your character and developing perseverance in you than he is to getting you to some position where you'll finally be happy and all those things. So when I have this up here, I don't want you to hear it as, God's got a victory coming for you. You're here now, but he's got a victory coming. That's not what's happening. The victory is when he creates perseverance. I'm not a long distance runner. Jeff, we got one here. You'll run some long distance, right? We got some long distance runners here. I'm not sure this is, you can correct me later, Jeff, if you want, or you can just right now, you can say something too, but the difference between an elite long distance runner and an average one is not a better training program or more athleticism or genetics. The difference between an elite runner and an average one is what? It's your mentality. It's your ability to push through pain and to push through setbacks and challenges that you weren't expecting. It's up here. And so it's the same too. Like as we're going to commit to wherever we're at right now financially, to how can I manage money better and well in a way that's from wisdom given to me from God? As we do that, God has to give us perseverance. Joseph, after this long period of suffering, eventually, and persevering, without becoming embittered and just checking out, God exalted him, didn't he? He raised him up to a huge position of honor and management. And why did God do it? By the way, what was Joseph going to do through this high position of authority and management? It's going to be Pharaoh's mouthpiece. And in a time of incredible scarcity and incredible potential for death and vulnerable people, what was Joseph going to do? He's going to provide. He's going to, the language that's used later, we didn't read the section, save the world. That's literally what it said. So God raised him up and exalted him to a position to bring blessings to other people, right? To bring blessings to the nations. And like I was telling the kids, doesn't that sound like anyone else who went down, who was betrayed by his own friends, and who went down into the pit of darkness and death, and then was raised and exalted to a position of honor and glory? For what reason? Was any of it for Jesus himself? It was to bring blessings of life and abundance and hope to the nations. It was to save. So here's the interesting thing, everybody. The Bible says when the Apostle Paul is writing to congregations, groups of people who are, they're on the lowest ladder of society, and they've been conditioned by society to believe that they have no value at all. Do you know what Paul tells them? You guys have actually been seated with Christ in the heavenly realms. Do not listen to the people who determine your worth and value, because what God says is through faith in Jesus, your life is hidden with him in God. And that's true for us too. And why has God lifted us up with Jesus? To bring blessings to others. And so when we put this in the context of finances and our relationship to money, I mean, just think of, you've been lifted up to take care of your family. The Bible says that anyone who doesn't take care of their own family is worse than an unbeliever and has denied the faith. Jesus has lifted us up and raised us up with him to take care of our families. He has lifted us up so that we can take the gifts and the abilities that he's given to us, that maybe we can even craft them a little bit and work on them, gain education, whatever, so that through our jobs, which provide a source of income to us, through our jobs we can also bring benefits to people. That's what our jobs, our callings are for, is to bring blessings and benefits to others and to receive a source of income while we do it. We're lifted up with Jesus to think of how we can support the ministry of the gospel and the good news of Jesus so that it would go out to the world, and to do that through our local church, to do that through the greater church. And then especially we're also called, we're lifted up by Jesus to look at, to consider and think about people around us who don't maybe have access to the same resources that we do and who are living lives of scarcity for something that's out of their control, and to consider how we can be generous and gracious toward them and help them, to bring blessings to others. A couple years ago, we did the Muddy Dash. Pastor Hansen talked us into this. Can you believe Pastor Hansen talking us into doing something crazy? Yes, of course you can. That's his MO. He's great at it. He sold us on this. Ashley went, right, Ashley? This is a picture of Pastor Hansen going head first into the mud. Wouldn't that be great if I had a picture of him? This isn't actually him. I thought I had one somewhere. I was looking all over through my phone to see if I can find it, because I know I had one, and I couldn't find it. So I was like, we'll just put this one up because it's the closest thing. And he did have a very similar dive into a muddy pit area. But has anybody ever done one of these muddy dashes? It's amazing because you come in dry and you come in clean and you come in thinking I don't know if this is really a great idea, and you see some of these obstacles and stuff and you're just like I don't know if I'm up for this. But hey, the kids are here. I can't be the old dad who doesn't do this crazy stuff. So you go through one pit, right? And you get covered in dirt, it's slippery, it's hard to get back out of the pit and all these things. But then once you do, you're kind of like, all right, this isn't that bad. I'm already wet, I'm already muddy. Let's see what else they got for me. And then you get to the next obstacle and it's like, okay, that's challenging. It looks like it's going to be a little work, but I think I've got it. And then it's kind of cool. You guys remember how people were strangers, complete strangers, are climbing up things and they're encouraging, you got this, you can do it. And you got people encouraging you, and everybody's going after it and getting up the obstacles and covered in mud and sweat, and we're all cheering for each other. And then you get to the end and it's the finish line and you're done. And the thing that's really fun about it is you realize I did some things today that I wouldn't have normally done. I pushed through. Listen, this is kind of a lame example. All right, I know, I get it. I pushed through just so that my kids wouldn't make fun of me. But what happens when and you guys all know this, when you confront a challenge that's ahead of you, and it looks hard, and your instinct is to say, I don't want to, and you push through, really beautiful things happen on the other side, don't they? I don't know where everybody's at with financial wisdom, and I don't know how many of you are going to take the course. I know it looks intimidating to say, boy, 10 weeks. And I'm not going to lie, like there's even 2 hours a week of homework, if not more, and things that you're going to have to do to kind of get dialed in and to work. I don't want to sugarcoat. I would love for everybody in this room to join up in this financial course, because I know I need it. I think all of us would benefit from it in some way. And I don't want to, it's going to take work. All right, Andrea? It's going to take work. I know you're signed up. Yeah. But even if you aren't doing the course and you want to reconsider and start working through maybe some things you know are going to be challenging with finances. And your instinct is, I don't know if I'm ready and if I want to do that. I can guarantee you, and young people even, I know this seems like something that's far off, but it's not. And the sooner you can develop some of these skills and gain wisdom from God, the better. But here's the thing. Persevering through the pit is where God does great things. It's where God forms our character. It's where he develops in us something that's way more important than being able to check boxes off of where we've gotten financially. And that is to develop perseverance through hope. So I look forward to doing this together. If you're not going to take the course, that's okay too. We'll also have reading plans that you can participate in each week, and that's a much smaller time commitment. But I do want to just challenge everybody again. If you have not signed up for this and you're thinking of reasons not to do it, push yourself. Persevere through the pit. Because if we don't give up, and I think this is going to lead to us doing some good things individually and corporately. If we don't give up at the proper time, we're going to reap a harvest of righteousness.